Alright, so hello, welcome to this video. Whatever intro stuff, I don't really care about that. Today I will be doing a tutorial on how I color or render whatever hair. So I've already gotten something drawn out just to save time. Yeah, it's a head, it's hair, it's whatever. To make it more visible, I've changed the line art to black, but like I'll usually sketch it. Kind of been liking this red color lately. That part doesn't really matter. So I have some colors picked out too. To do this, you will need, that's the wrong layer. To do this, just the way I do it, you'll need two colors. You'll need a darker color for shading, and then a lighter color, that's your base color. Then I picked another set of colors just to show like dual color, how one can fade into the other, that sort of stuff. So if you have a character with hair that's, part this one, part that one, or has dyed tips or something. Anyway. What you'll also need for this, let me just find my brushes. You'll need your main brush. I'm using, it's kind of a pencil-y sort of brush, I don't know. But you can use whatever brush you want. So you'll need that, and then you'll need a blendy brush. I like this one. It's the same pencil brush, but with blending on it. Just 10 color stretch, 0 on everything else. And I forget what mode, but it's the first one in Clip Studio Paint. So to start off, I will take my first color, and that looks like a good diameter for the brush. So I have a part in the hair right here, and what I will do is I will line isn't the right word, I'm drawing a line, but I will follow all of the different strands of hair I have up into that center point, and that's just wherever you want the part to be. It doesn't have to be super exact. You can even leave some that are just chunks like that. I'm actually not gonna leave that chunk. Sometimes I do leave it until later. If I have an overlap right there, I feel like drawing that in though. On the sides of the hair, it gets a little weird, but like I said, it doesn't have to be super exact. Messed up a little. So you just follow all of those. It can be a little bit of a tedious process. This whole thing can be kind of tedious. And in places where it doesn't completely line up, it's not a big deal. You just kind of do your best. You make a guess. If it looks like it kind of lines up, that's fine. With these bits down here, I'm doing the same sort of thing. And now we've got all of that set. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this darker shade. That's the one I'm using, by the way. And I am going to, this is a really tedious process, sorry. But I'm going to color in one strand at a time. I do this per section, chunk, strand, whatever. kind of not the best way to do it, but it's how I do it. You can use like one of these fill tools. That's fine. You know, I do that sometimes when I'm feeling really lazy. It doesn't really... Like, you don't want to color in too next to each other. Sometimes when I want to make it faster, I'll do a few chunks at a time. Just make sure they don't touch each other because that can affect the process. So next I'm going to take my base color. We're doing the shadow first, and then moving in with the base. For the base, I just kind of color in the middle. It doesn't have to be very precise at all. Very rough. We're just going to blend this out later anyway. And, you know, if you go over these overlapping bits, it's not a big deal because you're just going to color in that later. Sometimes it's even easier to do that. You kind of just want to make sure that this base color is surrounded by the shadow color. Next, you blend it. And it's messy, it's rough. You just do it until it looks good. That looks good to me. And I'll do this smaller section too. Just like that. Throw some in the middle and blend it out. If it tries to pick up color from somewhere else, or the transparency, you just throw in some more color. And you might want to use a slightly smaller brush or Lock Alpha. And then you kind of just do this the entire way around. You see I am connecting these. This is an overlap part, so you just color that in. Following how that is. And then you just add your color in. And blend it out. And then you'll just continue this for the entire head. It absolutely does get tedious after a while, but I find that it's worth it in the end. I really like how it looks. And it can, you know, the repetitiveness of it isn't so bad. It can be kind of soothing in certain situations, or it can be really, really annoying. The good thing about this is that it really doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, if it's not perfect, sometimes that makes it look even better. I guess one thing I would caution against is over blending. That is something that can absolutely happen. And when that happens, it kind of just looks muddy. You don't really get... It doesn't really look like the hair as much. I mean, for all I know, I'm over blending or something. Should be easy enough to fix, even if you are. You just, you know, you can redo it. Since it's being done in sections, I think that helps a bit. But again, that's just my opinion. For a while, to keep everything nice and organized and perfect, because I definitely used to care about that more, what I would do is I would make a lasso selection of the area after I outline everything in the different spots that I wanted to go into. And then I would, wrong tool, I would just fill it with the shadow color, the shading color, whatever, And do the same stuff, but I would also make sure to turn on an alpha lock when I go to blend it, just to keep everything organized and perfect, and I'd still end up having to go through and blend things in the middle. I think doing it without that has turned out to be a lot easier, a lot less button pushes. When you get to the kind of top back here, it gets like really imprecise because you have smaller bits and weirder bits, and you kind of just go along with it. And this can work with any colors, not just blue, not just red. It really, you can do it with white hair, you could do it with dark hair, you could do it with blonde or whatever other colors. What I will suggest is, because you are switching between these a lot, you either want to have both in your main and sub colors, or have an easy reference just to select them. And as you can see, it's coming along, even just this little bit. The issue is, you'll think you're making great progress, and then you look at the complete other side, and that's still not done. And then you start, hitting your head against your desk because, oh great, there's more to do. But once you get a good groove going and you really get into it and you're familiar with the technique, it's really not so bad at all. I'll do this one too. I'm gonna leave these parts blank for now and come back to them, because that's where I'll show how to do the second color. And you see this one, it got kind of muddied. It got a little washed out. Got a little too blended, so you just come back in and add some more. It's digital art, so it's really forgiving. I'm sure you could do this with traditional art too. You just have to do it maybe with like acrylic paint or something. This is, I think it's considered an additive technique, not to sound all fancy. I don't know, you're working dark to light. You're laying down your shadows first and then coming in with your light colors. My favorite parts to color in this way are definitely like the bangs and stuff. Anything that's above everything else. It's just a lot easier to do. The shapes make a little more sense than the weird little side bits. I'm saving this overlapping part just for when I'm done with the rest of this. And sometimes you can take a couple pieces that are next to each other and combine them in, just if you feel like it. You can always separate them out later if you don't like how they look connected, but it's definitely easier to use anything you don't want connected and just do it how you want it. That didn't make much sense when I said it. Hopefully someone can make sense of that. Hopefully, yeah. So now I'm gonna take this back up to the top area. The reason why I do separate out the pieces, I find it's easier to kind of plan stuff out and see how much is left, what I've got to do. You don't necessarily have to do that. Like up here, I didn't actually have those separated out in the same way, just the main chunks separated, but it's fine. I've said it a million times, but it doesn't have to be super precise or exact. And we're already looking nice there. So now we're going to move down to this bottom section. And what I will do is I will take both shades now, both the red and the blue in the darker color, and this is even more annoying. So color in the red, you color in the blue, in the darker tones, and sometimes I like to blend them, so I'll do that here. Then you take the lighter shades, and it's basically the same process. You're just blending everything together, so that it makes a nice little gradient. You've got the red, the blue, and right next to it, I'll do it again. This time, I won't blend the dark parts first, just to show you how that looks. I do both. It depends on how I'm feeling. I think doing it this way makes it a little easier. If you find that you're not getting enough definition between your strands, or chunks, or whatever, just come in with the darker color again, and separate it out. In these shorter bits, you do it a little less. It's kind of just, use your best judgment. Do what you think feels right with it, whatever. And sometimes you'll have to come back in and just color over it because you forgot that you were supposed to be changing colors. And now on to the next side. I feel like maybe I should have picked a different color, something that wasn't red. But we're already far too into it now to really consider changing that. I guess I'll, maybe once I'm done with this, show, how it might look with something else. Oh, and I went to the wrong place. Did something wrong again, but that's just how art is, I guess. Sometimes you put something in the wrong place. At least it's not the wrong layer. Speaking of layers, I do all of this on one layer. You could do it on two, but I find that it doesn't really blend the same way. I like how it blends doing everything like this. So now we've got two-toned hair down here, got the hair up there. I guess next I will show how I actually choose the colors and, you know, show how it might look with a different color set down at the bottom here. So I start off, I've been liking more, I guess, slightly desaturated colors lately. These are both kind of towards the middle zone. And then what I do is I go, you know, just down a bit and a little more saturated. So we'll take the blue still. But let's say we want something like a white color or a very light blue. This looks, I'll see how it looks next to it. Or I guess I won't. Let me change my layer. That looks pretty white, you know, relatively speaking. And it's in the same general bluish area. It's not a pure white, but I don't use those very often. They do have their place. But not necessarily in this instance. And then I'll take it, and that looks good next to it, sure. Maybe even a little lighter. I'll desaturate that a little more too to make it a little more gray instead of blue-gray. And then, oh, wrong button. I'll just erase this whole thing. And for this, it's really just the same process. I feel lazy, so I'll just color directly. So you take your darks, you take your lights, and you blend them out. I like to do kind of side outer portions first, just to get a really nice solid middle portion. That's just me. You know, you might decide to do the side portions first, I don't know. Then I'll go with the right here. And I think this one needs a little more definition, so I'll add that in. And then move on to the last section over here. And I totally forgot that other color. That does happen sometimes. It's easy enough to fix, just like everything else. I could have probably gone with a darker shade here, but I really don't feel like fixing it. And you know, it looks pretty much fine anyway. Any place that you think needs a little more blending, blend it out a little more. And as you can see, it looks all good here. What I also like to do, this is when it comes to line art in general. I have some auto actions. I have one for changing the line art color, and that one is one that I just downloaded, but it basically just blurs it out, and it changes the hue, saturation, and luminosity and stuff. You know, it runs through its thing, changes it to look like this. I move it up over the line art, and it looks fine like this, but what I like to do is move it down to around 50% or so, For certain places, like say the eyebrows for example, I'll take a soft airbrush or something and just brush over it with black. If I really wanted to, I'd lighten it up down here. I'm just taking a color from in here, from the zone, and just lightly going over it. But you really don't even need to do that. The last thing I do when it comes to coloring, rendering, whatever the hair, is a good highlight. I think the highlight really helps it come together extra. And to do that, I just add some shapes like this with the same brush I've been using. Bigger shapes work a little better. I will also add some lines along individual strands just to help bring them out a little more, especially on the outside there. If you have weird strands or clumps, like even down here or coming down from the sides or something, I'll do that too. And then I will take a regular blurring brush, not the same blending brush, and I will blur in the big sections just the top. So just the top of these big chunks here. And then when it comes to the lines, I will blur just the very tips and ends of them. But I will leave the middle part unblended. Once I'm done with that, I will turn that to an overlay layer and turn it down until it looks good. It's, I don't have a specific value for it. This is one of the cases where I think pure white definitely works well for me. It really brings out the overlay a lot better, and it really highlights everything. Sometimes I'll also flip the layer down to the colors. I mean, you could also, if you wanted to, take an airbrush, throw it around. You could go soft light. I think soft light doesn't work quite as well with whites, so I'll take it to overlay. And you've got a little more going on. I do like to sometimes highlight the faces, so that'll end up highlighting some of the hair too. And again, it's an overlay. It does its thing. Trying to think of what else I do. It's a lot harder to put stuff into proper words. I guess I will take everything and put it into a folder to show some overall finishing touches. I will clip a layer down onto that folder, and I will go to the most saturated colors. And with that, I will take the soft airbrush still and just throw some random colors around, just however I feel like. It really doesn't matter. I don't really have a good method for this, it just kind of all goes everywhere. And after that, I will turn that into a soft light layer and bring that all the way down to around 10-ish opacity. And it doesn't really look like it does much, but I think the slight hue changes in it really makes a difference, and I do that usually all over a piece. And you could turn it up if you want to. I think 10, just overall, as a general thing, looks good. And I could add a bunch of gradient maps too. That's more generalized though, again. Just for fun. Let's throw in some cute little eye shines, That's another situation where I might use pure white instead of an off-white. But, it's just whatever. I'm kind of getting off topic now while I'm doing this. So, I don't know, that's how I do hair. To recap, just because, a recap's always good. You start with your line art. You just draw it however you draw. Then from there, you pick out your colors. You pick out your base tone. And then you make it darker and slightly more saturated for your what's it called, the shadow. The shading color. You do that, and you do that all across the board for any of the colors that you're going to use for the hair. Then you actually start the coloring. You separate out your chunks, color it in with the shading color since we're going from dark to light. Add your light tone, and then you take your blending brush and you blend it together. If you're using another color that you want to blend into it, you add blending color, preferably before you blend everything else. And then you just kind of do all the same stuff. Then for highlights, you use white, add some chunks, blur it out. Maybe you'll add some softer highlights with, an airbrush. If you want to color your liner, you do that. Add whatever tone shifting, whatever you want. And then you're done. So, hopefully this was a helpful tutorial. Hopefully it taught you something, or was at least a little bit entertaining. Thank you for watching. And I guess that's it. I don't know. I'm not really that good at doing this whole outro, intro, whatever thing, so I'll just end it here.